Good morning, YouTube. Now, I know I promised a video with more past stuff, because it's Memoirs of a Gretchen, but I've been wanting to make a video of this type for a while now, and I figured that today is a good place to start. But yeah, so today we're gonna have the merged topic of my love of video games and my grandmother. Now, I know what you're thinking. Of our generation, grandparents are more like, video games? You mean devil games? Or something along those lines. I don't really know. Mine was really awesome. Along with just being the generation for it, it was my grandmother that really cultivated my love of video games. So, happy birthday, Grandma. Congratulations. You're on YouTube now. So as you can probably see, mine and my roommate's wonderful setup. But as you will notice, that NES and the SNES there both belonged to my grandmother before me. So unlike the rest of my life growing up, I actually got to the video games first rather than my older siblings. So when we were younger, my siblings and I would always take the bus from school into the general area where our grandmother's house was. And we would just be at Grandma's until Mom and Dad got off work. They'd pick us up, we would probably eat there all together, stuff like that. And we would take turns playing the video games. Now there was my sister who was, the top of the litter, and then my brother, and of course I'm the youngest, so I was the last to go typically. But at the same time, I was the youngest, so I find that I didn't really appreciate what was going on, the gravity of things. I mean, there's my older sister, and she's over here probably trying to beat Final Fantasy III, because when it was on the cartridge on the SNES, it was Final Fantasy III, whereas it's really Final Fantasy VI. Little Gretchen's probably going, but I want to play Lion King! And just like, shut the fuck up, younger Gretchen, this is serious! So I didn't really appreciate gaming as I do now, so it's probably best that I didn't get a big turn. Or at least that I remember. But yeah, as it happens, I heard the story many times of how my grandma decided to get into the video games. Because my grandmother was also a great one for verbal storytelling. Because if you didn't hear the story the first time, you got to hear it the, 2, 3, 5, 6 other times she had to tell it too. She had to tell everyone all the news. So I guess I should say I probably developed my love of verbal storytelling from her. Do you like my friend? So I believe it was one day, they went to go visit my cousin, Jessie, I believe. And they sat down, and if I remember correctly, they played The Legend of Zelda. And I forget how long my grandmother said she got into it, but I believe she turned to my grandfather, and she went, I'm getting one of these. And so it came to pass that my grandma got the Nintendo. So then, as a young child, I got to play wonderful things such as The Legend of Zelda, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where is it? The Disney Adventures of the Magical Kingdom. I think this was my favorite game of all time. And there's all of the Castlevania games and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Battle chess. This is intense. You think it's just playing chess? Okay, really, yeah, it is. It is just playing chess. But, when the pieces move into place and your king goes to take a pawn, it goes to a little cutscene, and there's a king, and the pawn or the knight or whatever, king just whips out a gun and shoots you. Now the queen is scary. She just whips out a magic staff and vaporizes you. And the knight goes, ah! And just vaporizes into a pile of dust. We see that. It's really violent. And so of course when the time came in progression, she also got the Super Nintendo. I spoke of a line earlier between my brother, my sister, and me. Sometimes my other cousins if they were visiting, but we all went behind Grandma. But then again, typically she was probably playing during the day while we were in school. So I also have gems of, I believe, well, the Super Mario All-Stars cartridge in there belongs to my roommate, but down a little ways there's Super Mario World. I've got A Link to the Past, Mega Man X. I've got Final Fantasy. I have Final Fantasy 3, The Secret of Mana. And this works. But in addition to all that, I found out that my grandma was a gaming boss. About a year and a half ago, she passed away. Hence, I inherit most of the gaming stuff. She did also have a Nintendo 64, but that was about the end of her video gaming career because she couldn't hold the weird controllers anymore. So I think she got the gaming scoop from us kids. She still bought them, but we gave her the scoop. I believe she finished Ocarina of Time, and I think that was the last Zelda she beat. Because Majora's Mask came out later, and that was harder for her. But I mean, she still played games on her computer. But yeah, I'm going through all her old memorabilia, and there are like these ancient game guides, Game Boy and Nintendo Power. I found a bunch of old graph paper notebooks mapping out the dungeons of like Zelda. I believe I found one that was Chrysalis and Time Lord. What is the other one? Really intricate maps and designs, monster names and their stats and what was strong against them and not, the stats of weapons and the like. I mean, we can just pull this up on a GameFAQ. No, she took the time and wrote them every single detail down in a notebook. What a boss! I mentioned cultivating my love of video games before, and that's the truth. Because she bought that 64 and it was kept at her house and it was for us. And she bought games for us. She talked about us with video games all the time, or at least with me. Because I would go, "Hey Grandma, there's this new thing called the GameCube." And I talked to her about Twilight Princess and she was like, "That's really cool." Because she liked to hear where these franchises went, even though she couldn't do it anymore. Stuff like how Final Fantasy was going. Had to explain how the Wii worked to her. She had a great love of science fiction and Final Fantasy that I can't even fathom, although I guess I can. Because another thing I inherited from her are the entire movie collections of Star Trek. And every Christmas or New Year's, we had a standing tradition of when I went to her house to make the noodle soup. It's like a tradition. She couldn't make it anymore, so I made it for about the last 7 years or so. And every time we sat down to make it, because, well, she says we, and it's like, what, you, the frog in your pocket? Of course, she had to make sure I did it right. But we would sit down and we would watch Willow. We even have the game. I think Willow was one of her favorite movies. She also had all the Star Wars movies and the Indiana Jones movies. I mean, my parents are nerds. But we all spent a fair amount of time at Grandma's house. Both Mom and Dad worked. And to be fair, I think if all three of us were left alone at home, we would have burnt the house down. So after school and during the summer, it was Grandma's. So I think it's fair to say that my grandmother had a big impact on who I am today and just how nerdy I am. So happy birthday, Grandma. I miss you every day. So there you have it. So there you go, another memoir. Just remember the true story. Also, as a shout out, I'd just like to say 13 subscribers! Okay, I'm probably too excited about that. But 13, that's a room full of people. At least like this room. It's a room full of people in this place. I think half of you are the people I know, but that means half of you are people that I don't know. And that's awesome! So I'd just like to say thank you for liking and thank you for subscribing.